I'm gonna be honest, the lighting is very poor. I'm not as awake as I wish that I was for this review, which is why I'm drinking coffee, and I have some artificial lighting to help me along, but yes, our situation is not ideal, but persevere we must. Hey everybody, so welcome to another video. I'm glad that you're here. Today, I'm going to be talking about Hyperion by Dan Simmons, which, wow, I have a lot of feelings. All of them are good. Basically every single one of these feelings are good. If you're the type of person who doesn't really necessarily like to know anything about a book before you start it, other than maybe its genre, this is sci-fi by the way, then just go forth and read this book. If you like to know a little bit more about it, stay tuned. I'll try and keep this, I will try and keep this as spoiler-free as I possibly can, but sometimes I get excited and then I go off on little tangents that contain spoilers. Okay, so Hyperion, what is it? This is a sci-fi book. This is technically it's the first book in a series of 4, but it is really kind of almost considered to be a novel in and of itself, and just the first and the last. The writing style in this book or the writing structure, the tone, the everything is very unique. Oh, there's a child on a bicycle and it's pouring rain. That is dedication, my friend. First off, it won a Hugo. I think the second one won a Nebula or something like that. But we're only talking about this one. Back on track, no tangents, here we go. In brief, it mirrors intentionally the Canterbury Tales. It is a tale of pilgrims sharing their stories whilst on a pilgrimage. So what does that mean? You have about 7 main characters, spoilers, and what they're doing is they're traveling from different parts of the universe, and they are going to the planet called Hyperion for a very specific but also very undefined reason, and that's undefined intentionally. And each person has a different reason for why they were picked to go on the pilgrimage, to go visit the Shriek? Pronunciation guide, please. So they are going to a specific place on Hyperion called the Time Tombs, which is also the origin place for the Shrike. I'm gonna go with Shrike because Shriek is not spelled like that. So the Shrike is this very menacing, very mythical creature, essentially looks like this, covered in lots of spiky thorn things, and kills people for really no reason. And the Time Tombs are time locked, which really reminds me of Doctor Who, which like hits me right in the feels. They're in this little this time bubble where they are traveling backwards in time compared to the rest of the universe. So that's part of the general background. Some additional useful background that you might want to know would be that old Earth is our current Earth, and it has died for spoiler reasons. And humanity has spread to the stars and lives on multiple worlds, and people can farcast to each world, which is basically teleporting, so you can travel instantaneously. Gets excited, and people can also travel in like your stereotypical just giant intergalactic spaceships, and they can travel like that. They have a really interesting way of dealing with what happens with the relativity. Ooh, really verging into territory that I'm not very good at. How they deal with like the difference between time on a particular planet and then how time passes for the people on the ships, whereas farcasting is instant. So I'll leave that there, getting into some interesting sciencey detail there. And then we'll move on to what makes this really unique, which is how it's written. So each of the pilgrims was chosen to make their way to Hyperion for some reason, right? So this book does what I have not actually seen anywhere else outside of Cloud Atlas, which honestly kind of sucked at this game, which is make a series of interlocking nest egg style of stories where each person or pilgrim tells why they ended up there and tells what part of them and their story led them to where they are. So when I had no idea when I picked this up, so I started reading it, and it's like, you know, your main storyline. And then all the characters like, yeah, let's sit down and tell these stories. So the first person starts to tell the story, and it goes on for like 100 pages. And I was like, what is this? This is very annoying and very long. Until you reach the end of the first short story, and it just like blew my mind. And I was like, that was an incredible story. And it's written in a very specific way. And then the next pilgrim starts to tell their story. And then if it occurred to me, well, I also flipped ahead just to check, but each person tells their own story. But interestingly, each story is written in a very specific writing style and genre that is just like mind-blowing, because Dan Simmons must have an incredible command of his writing to pull that off, and he really pulls it off, because the first one is kind of a journal stereotypical like 1800s style of writing, and the second tale is like hard sci-fi but like with romance in it, which I do not dig the romance, but in this one I think it like weirdly worked. The third one, I think it's the third one, is really famous because it's nope, fourth one, sorry. The third one's super weird, in like the best way possible. They're all super different. And the fourth one is this incredible tragic story, which I think was published by itself and won awards or something, and so on and so forth. So each is told in a very specific style. I also wanted to mention that I think the fifth one is written in a very Blade Runner style, which I love. And by Blade Runner, I mean Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, because the book was not called Blade Runner. It bothers me when people get that wrong. So this was incredible, because each of the stories not only are incredibly unique, just taken by themselves, but all together, they fit together and they describe parts of this universe that the others might have left out or just briefly touched on, then you have some sort of question about it. So they, throughout all of them, they build the characters, which is really cool. They build the world, and they complement each other so well. I have to use my hands to describe this because I need it. And they culminate in the final ending, which is not really the ending so much as kind of the beginning, the setup to the rest of the books. But really, Hyperion is about the journey, and it's about the background, and it's about humanity, and it's about ethics, and so on and so forth. It does an incredible job. A lot of the interesting points about Hyperion is that it makes a lot of weird literary references to like John Keats and obviously the Canterbury Tales, and it's really classic literature, which unfortunately I'm kind of missing in my arsenal of books that I've read. So now I feel, and sorry, I was just scratching my knee. Also, I'm wearing my awesome slippers. The realities of filming a video is that you only really have to dress up from the waist up. So there's a lot of elements to each story that are very unique. There's like some noir, there's mystery, there's the romance, but of course it's all written in like a sci-fi umbrella, because of, I mean, there's at least a sci-fi element to each of the stories, which I love. I love sci-fi. Also, what I really like about it, and actually this is what I really didn't like about it at first, is that the first like couple of paragraphs are very like classic sci-fi, overly descriptive, flowery, trying to sound more intelligent than it is, which actually really was just, I think, an element just to pull in readers who are the main body of sci-fi readers, because it very quickly shifts into a very intelligent, smart, snappy, witty style of writing that very clearly demonstrates that Dan Simmons knows exactly what he's doing. So that's kind of cool. If you're deterred by the first couple paragraphs, keep going. I promise it doesn't stay that stodgy and old. There's like some political elements to it, which I think are really interesting. And I'm currently reading the second one, and I must say it is a huge step down from Hyperion in terms of like the structure and the unique quality. It's definitely much more like your typical sci-fi computer. I'm not done with you. So, I mean, I would say if you're interested, if after you read this you're interested in some of the unanswered questions, like what happens at the end of their journey, definitely keep reading. If you want to leave it as the perfection that it is, just leave it. If you're one of those people who can just like not know the ending to things, sure, leave it there. But for me, I have to know. So I'll make a follow-up video on the other three of them, and we'll see if they're any good. Okay, I think that is just about everything. Overall, I would recommend this to pretty much anybody. I think I read somewhere that if you've never read sci-fi before, this is not a great place to start. I don't agree with that at all. If you want to read it, you're not going to be confused. It's, you know, it's spaces. You'll pick it up from there. Everybody go read Hyperion. If you've read it, Let me know in the comments. I'm dying to know. I hadn't really heard of this book until like, I mean, I guess 7 years ago briefly, and then now this is my world, this is my life. I'm like, oh my God, everyone and their mother needs to read this book, and also their father and brother and sister and whatever. So, yes, thank you for watching again. If you are subscribed to this channel, thank you very much. If you are not subscribed to this channel and want to see more book reviews and also random videos involving a Bengal cat, and sometimes I do terrible things to my hair, then perhaps you would be interested in subscribing below. If not, that's cool. It doesn't hurt my feelings. And if you like this video, give it a like, and then I'll know that you enjoy sci-fi. Oh. I hope you guys have great days, great weeks, great months, great holiday time, and whatnot. And I will see you in the next one. Bye! This was 13 minutes long. Great.